Ante lingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque pretiosique in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi ex effulgentium.
We're delighted you can join us for the second of our Lent meditations, based around different types of prayer. My name's David. I'm the reader. I'm a licensed reader at Hewhurst Green, and I'm joined by our priest, Christopher. Canon Christopher has much experience in these things, and indeed has visited the part of Italy associated with the person we're going to think about today. We thought last time about St. Benedict and the idea of praying in a community. This time we're almost going to the other end of a spectrum. We're thinking about praying with emotion, and we're thinking particularly about St. Francis and the Franciscan rule and St. Francis's ways of praying. So I'd like to ask Christopher, I know you've actually been to Assisi quite a lot. Can you tell us a little bit about Assisi and just in general terms about St. Francis?
Yes, St. Francis was born in the city of Assisi, and his father was a wealthy cloth merchant. As a young man, he, I suppose what today would say, he sowed his wild oats, and also was involved in skirmishes and military campaigns and so on. And during the period of illness, very often this happens to people, doesn't it? He kind of reevaluated his life. What am I doing? What is it that God might want me to be and to do? So he had, as it were, a crisis, and that led him to a place where his vocation was clearly received and understood. There, in a little church outside of Assisi, there nestling between the olive groves and the vineyards, the south slopes of Mount Saviastro and the church of San Damiano, which was in a state of complete disrepair, and just hanging on one bracket was a suspended cross, the cross of San Damiano. And Francis looked at this painted figure of Jesus on the cross, and he heard the Lord speak directly to his heart, "Rebuild my church." And that's the seed of his vocation. And he soon gathered others around him, and they settled in the valley down below first of all. But of course, after his death, a great shrine was built, and this is the great Basilica of St. Francis. And as you approach Assisi from Perugia, you see this wonderful church at the top of the hill and the city of Assisi around it. It's just wonderful.
Now that was that was emotion. I'm sure it is. You've sold it to us all, Chris. Just one little thing, and I wondered if there was any significance in this. Is what you alluded to just now, in that we were thinking last time about St. Benedict, and the one aspect that's come through. Both of them were fairly wealthy, and then quite clearly felt God's call. I wondered if there's any significance in that, apart from the fact that maybe, I don't know, maybe in a way they had to be available for it at a specific time. I was going to ask you about that, and then, but also I wondered what differences there might have been, because there was St. Francis set up the Franciscan rule community, and Benedict, of course, set up the Benedictine ones. And I wondered what differences there might be in the rule, in that daily rhythm, in the general aspects of what they wanted their disciples, well, I think they were disciples, is that the right word, to be. Anyway,
Yeah,
over to
yeah,
you.
followers of Benedict and Francis. I suppose really the difference would be Benedict was gathering people in a particular place, and so, you know, bound within a monastery with the walls and so on. For Francis and the Franciscans, the world, the natural world, the world is actually their monastery. They're mendicants. They wander the earth, and that's why Francis embraced Il Poverello, Lady Poverty. They were to be unencumbered. There was nothing must tie them, and I suppose that goes with the vow of chastity. So they had no ties, and so they were free to walk from place to place and to live out the simplicity of the gospel in their everyday life. But like the Benedictines, they also had a rhythm of prayer, and what developed in the Franciscan tradition was the breviary. That's putting all the services into one book, a breviary, a short book, which could be carried, because they were on the road, let's put it this way. Franciscans are always on the road, and they never stay in one place for terribly long.
Excellent. Excellent. So both rules, both communities were by no means mutually exclusive. There were different approaches to God, but actually very different, having that closed community and one without boundaries. That's really, really interesting. And I think that perhaps feeds into, I don't know, in childhood, sometimes we could probably perhaps conjure up a rather sentimental picture, possibly of St. Francis surrounded by, rabbits and birds and such like, very much as a patron saint of nature. Well, clearly his vocation went somewhat deeper than that. So I think I'd like to really now hear about how you see St. Francis's wonder in nature, and the praise that must have welled up inside him, the praise for God, and how that clearly we could do, particularly as we're lucky enough to position where we are in our little part of the world where we have nature all around us. So I wonder what we think about that.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Very often we have a very fluffy kind of picture of Francis, but there was something rugged about him, and there was obviously a great depth to him. He realized that not everything in the world is as it should be. It was Francis, remember, who embraced the leper. He didn't avoid suffering or those who were suffering, but also had that great empathy with the creatures of God's creation. And there's stories of his great companion, or one who became a companion, the wolf of Gubbio, and he took a thorn out of the paw of the wolf, and the wolf was sort of tamed, as it were. But yes, so Francis certainly is pretty kind of robust as well. And we're going to hear in a moment, actually, when we close, a great praise which he wrote. But it included these words: "Be praised, my Lord, for our sister, the death of our body." Gosh, now that really strikes us, doesn't it? And he recognizing that every living thing is born and lives and grows and dies, and perhaps that is something for us in a culture that doesn't deny death, but perhaps doesn't quite face up to the realities of death. For the Christian, of course, that is also a rebirth into a deeper life. But the life on earth is a life. Very often Francis would always go out, they'd go out in twos and threes, in little groups, walking out, seeing who they'd meet, seeing who they'd encounter along the way. And it rather makes me think that, his heart was full of joy and full of praise, because as he walked, he would notice things and then give thanks to God for them. And as you say, where we're placed in such a blessed, wonderful part of the country that's not unlike Umbria with its undulating hills and all its woodland, that when we walk out, perhaps we can walk out consciously praying as well. That is, being aware of things around us, and particularly at this time of year. Rosie's just come back for a walk with someone and said they saw a skylark in the field by Herbie's farm, and primroses that are coming out. Just stop and pause as you walk and offer a voice of praise. Say, thank you, God. Because what you're doing is actually voicing what nature is doing, which is showing its life, that God-given gift of life in all its colour, variety and beauty. So praise just issues out when we stop and look, and when we look and we wonder, we admire the beauty and just say, God, thank you for the gift of life.
Yeah. Needless to say, couldn't have put it better. And the more I've just sort of tried to, learn a little bit about St. Francis, the more, robust, that's probably a really, really good word. It just seemed whatever he did with his whole heart and soul. So robust and passionate, perhaps passionates. People have passions for this and passions for that, which often means they've just got a hobby, but he truly was passionate, had this passionate lifestyle, didn't he? And it seemed like that, and great resilience. I was sad to learn that he didn't have a long life. He died at 45, but gosh, didn't he leave a wonderful legacy for us? You gave us a line from his famous canticle, the Canticle of the Sun, Christopher, and I wonder if you'd like to read to us some more of that. Quite well-known passage, so over to you for that. Before we just go on to that, can I just introduce next week? We've done St. Benedict and St. Francis, and we're going to look at St. Ignatius next time. But for now, over to Christopher, and thank you for listening to this.
Good. So we're going to say our prayer now and invite you to pray with me using the words of St. Francis, which he composed actually on his sickbed in a room in the convent at San Damiano. I've actually been in that room, and you look out of the window, literally a window, an open space down into the fields and the trees below. And what is extraordinary about this is that he has a sense that all the creatures, the birds and the plants, the gushing water from the springs and the streams, all these things in their own way are praising God simply by being. We know this canticle because it's that familiar hymn we all sing and know and love, all creatures of our God and King. All creatures of our God and King. But let me read the words of Francis that inspired that hymn. Most high, all-powerful, good Lord, to you be praise, glory, honour, and all blessing. May you be praised, my Lord, with all your creatures, especially brother Sun, through whom you lighten the day for us. He is beautiful and radiant with great splendour. He signifies you, O Most High. Be praised, my Lord, for Sister Moon and the stars, clear and precious and lovely, they are formed in heaven. Be praised, my Lord, for brother wind, for air and clouds, clear skies and all weathers, by which you give sustenance to your creatures. Be praised, my Lord, for sister water, who is very useful and humble and precious and pure. Be praised, my Lord, for brother fire, by whom the night is illumined for us. He is beautiful and cheerful, full of power and strength. Be praised, my Lord, for our sister, Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us and produces diverse fruits and coloured flowers and grass. So let us, as it were, as we walk, perhaps day by day, or even if we just look out of our windows, perhaps catching sight of a bird or a flower coming into blossom, and let us, as it were, give thanks to God for that sign of life and add our own verse, as it were, to this wonderful Canticle of Creation by Francis of Assisi.
Thank you, Christopher, very much. And we'll all say amen to that.